appreciate the time that you are spending with us today. And I know that some of you have been here all day, some of you just came. And I'd like to introduce myself in this panel. My name is Stephen G. Fullwood, and I am the co-editor of Artists as Writers, Living and Sustaining a Creative Life. This book contains 32 contributions from folks who sustained themselves as writers, have written themselves through grief, science writers, poets, editors, and so forth. And it's the kind of book that is it's a great companion if you're trying to if you're just starting out and you don't know if you're a writer, and if you're a writer and you just want some company, it's very nutritious. So I recommend you check it out. It's at the bookstore downstairs. To my immediate right is the screenwriter, author, and playwright Tina Andrews, who, it's funny, why did I think I could totally remember this? Let me respect this woman. We will respect together. How about that? So an American author, screenwriter, and playwright living in London, Tina Andrews is the very first African-American to win the Writers Guild of America Award in TV long form for her CBS limited series, Sally Hemings, An American Scandal. Thank you so much for joining us today. Clap, 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 clap. To her immediate right, we have Trey Johnson. And Trey Johnson's a Philadelphia-based culture writer. His debut book, he's going to hold it up and show you. Right. It's Black Genius, and will be published July 29th. Thank you for joining us, Trey. And to his right is a wonderful Harlemite by the name of Karon Taborn, who is holding her book, Walking Harlem, the Cultural Capital of Black America, and it was published by Rutgers University in 2018. Thank you for joining us, Karon. And just a couple more things about Karon. She's also featured in this book, so she tells you a little bit about her journey to becoming a writer. And Karon is a friend of another friend whose papers are here. His name is Wallace Bass Boyd. And his papers, we acquired his papers, I think, in the 2013 or so, roughly around that time. And they were walking down the street, and I had just finished reading Walking Harlem, and then she showed up in front of me. And so that was just one of those fortuitous moments that only happens in Harlem. Let me tell you right now, only happens in Harlem. This particular place holds a lot of memories for me because I used to be the head of the division here as assistant curator from 2013 to 2017. And so being back here, I love it. I love it. I've been here for 19 years, 3 months, and 24 days. And I left in 2017 to start my own project called the Nomadic Archivist Project, which is, we work with Black folks in archives, full stop. And we've been doing it for a good 7, 8 years now. So I'm always trying to figure out how to make sure we take care of our stuff. And the reason why I did the bios really quickly is because I want to get right into the conversation with you guys. I also want to entice you to learning about them while they're here, but also after the panel. So I got to talk with Tina first because Tina is awesome. And Tina, how you doing today after that? How many plane rides to get here?
Yeah, 3.
3 rides. Oh, good.
15 out, yes.
Here's Queen Charlotte, A Royal Affair. It's one of her many books right here. Yes. Because you started out acting, I was wondering, how did you get to playwright, author, writer? This is a wonderful sort of journey that you've been on. And so tell us a little bit about how you got to here.
For those, can you hear me? If not, I will become the actress again and project. Thank you. I was back a while ago. I was acting while being Black, which meant that I did not have a lot of roles that I had the opportunity to do. And I realized it was because they were not being written for us. The roles that I was required to play, I was a round-the-way girl, or I'd be a young prostitute. There were always negative characters because they were written by people who were not of the culture. And my father said something to me that was very interesting, which I'll never forget. So he said, I sent you to NYU. You were supposed to be a writer. The fact that you've become an actress is great, but you need to be the change that you want to see. So you need to write the parts that you would want to play.
Lovely.
So the disconnect is, I did start to do that. It's just that I would write characters that I could not play. They'd either be characters that were, I'm like 5 feet tall if I breathe in, you know. So I was writing other things. And I loved the power, quite frankly, I loved the power behind the scenes. And the first person that I worked with who mentored me was Alex Haley. And Alec he was wonderful to me. I had been in Roots. I had been the first Black actress on Days of Our Lives, so I pioneered in those areas. And so I wanted to write those very fulfilling, empowering roles for Black women. And I was encouraged to write, and that's how it started. I like the power behind the scenes more than in front of the scenes. I get to do that job wearing my pajamas and no makeup. So that's always a good thing for me. So that is how it happened.
Freaking awesome. That's really great. So Trey, taking that up, how did you come to cultural criticism? Because I love cultural criticism, and when it's really done well, it's not about telling me how to think about something. It's giving it context. It's giving the space to the reader or the viewer to say, okay, what do I think about this? So did cultural criticism find you, or did you find it?
I think I kind of stumbled my way into it. I was doing a career educator. I was doing a lot of stuff I lived back in Philly. I was doing a lot of work in Philly and Camden, largely in Black communities, kind of door to door. And like, you know, the type of jobs that you have, like in those situations, you're kind of constantly absorbing and needing to like make sense of culture that you are advocating for on behalf of other people. So I think between that and just being like, probably like a lot of people in the crowd, like just someone who constantly consumes things around you. When I got a chance to, a friend of mine, her husband reached out to me because I'd been ranting on Facebook because that was like a thing back then when I was doing it. And he's like, hey, I kind of like the way that you like talk about stuff. Would you like to write something? He asked me over beer. He's like, you think you want to write something? I was like, no, I'm good. He's like, well, just think about it and I'll come back around to you. And he did. Like, weirdly enough, my first like cultural piece that I had published was was in reflection of Prince dying, so we're back in like 2017, I guess, and did really well. I was somebody who wrote in private or in writing groups for a long time, but I was like, I saw like the reaction of like an audience outside of myself, and I was like, oh, I kind of fuck with this. Like, I want to do this more, and so like it just opened up more and more doors for me, and then it just made me start to think even more keenly about how I was absorbing culture. I think particularly as a Black writer, like when you get a chance to have a platform to talk about how you are making sense of something that you're engaging with, you both do so from like the lens of like your cultural intellect, but also you're aware of the fact that you are, hopefully if you do it right, you're continuing to create opportunities for other Black folks to be able to do the same thing. So that's how it came about around doing cultural criticism. I've stayed in that lane as much as possible, and I love it. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Karon, your book, can you hold up your book right quick? The reason why I want you to hold up because it is small, but it is mighty. Okay? When you look at books, when you're looking at books that are, tourist books, or you're thinking about a particular neighborhood, like Karon packs so much into this particular thing. And what I love about it is at that time, this was during the pandemic that I picked up your book because we're doing a lot of walking. It was one of the few things you could do. You couldn't go anywhere, but you could walk around. And Harlem is this place that you're constantly surprised of the kind of history, the buildings, the people. You're not going to run into Langston Hughes, of course, and you're not supposed to. He's dead. But what you're going to run into are people who've been here for a while, some of the nicest people on earth. You're going to find the African contingent, you're going to find the Puerto Rican, you're going to find all these different folks, and they live together, we eat together, we go to the same laundromats and do all that. So with you, Karon, why Walking Harlem? Why did you decide to do this book?
Okay, I was invited into a project in 1992 when I was younger. Somebody who I knew was involved with the Strivers Center renovation project here on 135th Street between, it would have been 7th and 8th. and it's right there, down the street a block away. I was based on my first master's in jazz and the fact that I lived in Harlem, and I jumped on it because I wanted to know the history of the community that I lived in, that I still live in. But where was I going to find the time to read the first, say, 10 books, you know what I mean? To start to write something. Well, this was my opportunity. So I jumped on it. I dived in. I said, this is it. And I began to read many books, beginning with David Levering Lewis's books. He's the one, and Jervis Anderson's books. Those are the two, foundational Harlem history books, and then branching out. And I did a pretty good job. I mean, it was my first project. It was a paper. I wrote a paper. My mom, who has always been behind me, she really supported me. She was my biggest cheerleader. And she pulled in her friends from the civic activism that she was doing in our hometown of Kalamazoo, Michigan. And she got one of her friends to help us. Basically, it was we self-published. Somebody looked at it at one point and said, "Oh, it's a pamphlet." And I said, "Oh God, I guess I better write a book now, because I don't want that to be." She wrote a pamphlet, But that got me my first teaching job at NYU Harlem History, and then I would move on to other projects, singing jazz and things like that, and finally getting back to, I moved on to a second MA in ethnomusicology later in life, which was a good move because it gave me more technical training. How do you really finish a decent project? Not a pamphlet, but a book. And I got back to it around 2010. 11. I said I wanted to flush that paper out. I wanted to make tours. I wanted to research photographs or take my own photographs, which I ended up doing both. I wanted to flush out movements. I wanted to dig into certain personalities, and that's what I did. And I was blessed to be picked up by Rutgers University Press. That was wonderful. I love them and they love me. And so now hopefully we'll be working on the second edition next year. I mean, they seem to be enthusiastic. It's sold pretty well, And I do think, my mother was always behind me, always, in magical ways. And so, very magical ways. I can tell you, a few stories, maybe later.
Maybe it'll be in the second book.
Yeah, what's that?
Maybe they'll be in the second book.
Maybe.
How many writers do we have in the room?
Oh,
And don't forget, I know a lot of y'all.
wonderful.
How many people endeavor to write? Raise their hands.
Oh, not even the writers raise their
Right? So earlier on when I was talking about these writers, everyone has their own trajectory when it comes to becoming a writer. Some folks don't call themselves writer. Toni Morrison didn't call herself a writer until I think the fourth book or third book. Toni Morrison. That's insane. So for those of you who are endeavoring to write or are writers and didn't raise your hand, please start calling yourself a writer. Just inhabit the space. Get rid of all the notions of what a writer is supposed to do. Mm-hmm. This leads into my next question for all of you. What does your writer's life look like on a daily basis, Tina?
Oh, my goodness. Okay. I was not joking when I said earlier about, notice how I lean in? It's a short thing. It's a short thing. All right. My writer's day begins. I do my prayer and meditation always. I always thank the Lord for giving me what I feel is a modicum of talent that I have managed to take a long way with determination and moxie. But I do my prayer and meditation, and I thank the Lord for allowing me to wake up another day, because I can't tell you how close I am to being 3/4 of a century years old, and I'm still here working and carrying on. So the next thing I do, and this is before I change clothes. I generally work well in a pair of flannel pajamas. Okay, Denise is sitting up here laughing because it's just so. This is my best friend here. And a pair of flannel pajamas, and if not the whole pajamas, then it's the pajama bottoms and an NYU sweatshirt. Okay. No makeup, hair always. Hair always. And I immediately go to the computer and I simply say, Lord, allow me to be the portal through which your words flow. Let them flow today. I have 5 windows up. I'm always working on 5 projects because I don't know when I'm going to have writer's block over here. Then I can't waste a day. When you're close to 3/4 of a century years old, you got less time ahead than behind. I got to get it finished. So I will, hey. So my writer's day is pretty much like a 9-to-5 job. I will work through until noon or 1 o'clock. I get up and I take, particularly when I'm in London, then I take a walk to Hyde Park or to Holland Park and come back and work some more. I turned in, my publisher is here, Miss Valerie Brandes is here with Jacaranda Books. I turned in a book to her. She gave me a deadline, and I finished the book in 9 months and gave it to her. Because it's important that I figure out how many pages I have to do per day. In my head, if I'm going to turn in a 400-page book, I'm going to divide 400 pages by how many days in the month. I've got to do at least 4 to 5 pages a day. Now, that may seem like a small amount, but when you're talking prose in a novel, it becomes a lot. So if I've got 21 pages at the end of the week, then I treat myself like a puppy, give myself a treat, and say, you can go shopping. Okay. So that's my writer's life is exactly that. And I have made some time of late. There is a man. I made a little bit of time for him. But I primarily do my work as a writer. I live a writer's life, and it pays for a lifestyle. It is important that I do that work because I consider myself to be that person first and foremost. It is why I'm divorced. My ex-husband said, I see the back of your head more than I see anything else. And so that's real. So I'm a writer every day, all day.
Woo! Snaps up. So I want to introduce you guys to my co-editor, Seph Rodney, who is a PhD. Seph Rodney was a frequent contributor to the New York Times and was a former editor at Hyperallergic. And he and I we both were co-hosts of American Age, which was a podcast that ran for I don't know how many years, maybe 3 or 4, I forget, but I just felt like we were doing it all the time. So, Seph, I had everybody kind of...
Hi, everyone. What did I miss?
So I guess the question I had for you was, I know that you love art, and you're an art critic, and you also send me poems along with other people to read all the time, once or twice a week, right? How did you find art criticism? Because when I hear you, you love conversations. You love good conversations. Talk a little bit about that and share it with us.
Oh, okay. By the way, my apologies for being late. My flight out of D.C. was canceled last night at midnight, so I had to figure out how to rent a car and drive the last 4.5 hours to get here. Magically found a parking space on Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard. And ta-da! To answer your question, Mr. Fullwood. So I'm actually in the process of sort of writing a book about how I do the kind of work of seeing, of recognizing as an art critic. And part of what's entailed in writing that story is talking about that moment for me, which is really transformative. I know we talk about how art can be transformative, and it is, but it's not in a sort of, what's the word, in a sort of mechanized way. You can't put someone in front of a Kerry James Marshall painting and suddenly they, blossom into being. Art doesn't quite work that way. But for me, the formative moment was when I was 17, I think, and I just started to read poetry. And I was lucky in that my mom, who was, I'm a Jamaican immigrant, my parents are Jamaican immigrants. My mom at the time was going to school at Hunter College to get her nursing degree. And I think that she had to take one of those survey courses, English literature survey courses. So she happened to have Sylvia Plath's, I'm doing this because I'm picturing the thin book in the library in my parents' living room, had a copy of her collection of her last poems, Ariel. And I was reading that, and it evoked something in me. It broke open something in me. And it's around the same time that it's the first time that I actually went to a museum of art for the first time at 17 years old. And it helps to say that growing up in the household I did, which is very religious, I didn't have any access to sort of outside culture, outside of the church. I mean, I went to Christian school, I went to Christian summer camp. It was full court press, right? And so the first time I went to a museum of art, and it was on a trip that the class took when I was in college at Long Island University, Brooklyn campus, and we went to MoMA, and I saw this stuff on the wall. Mind you, I'd never been to a museum. I didn't know that people did things like that, like put objects up just so that we could talk to each other about them. So really, I was being placed in a position where I was asked to make meaning for the first time in my life of something that didn't already have this sort of very well worked out symbology, as the characters and figures in the Bible do, right? So I had to do that work, and I was confronted by, I won't describe the objects because I'm already taking up a lot of time, but there's Louis Bourgeois, there was Umberto Boccioni, there were these objects that I felt like I wanted to wrestle with. They were deeply meaningful to me in the moment of encounter. So it's from there that I sort of started to fall in love with art. And art and poetry sort of always kind of did this sort of intermingling thing for me. And I went to school, got my undergrad done in '97, had an English degree, decided that if I wanted to, I could have gone on to the PhD, but I didn't want to do that just yet. I wanted to actually spend some time making art for myself. So I became a photographer, worked up a portfolio, went to school in, I'm doing this because of pointing out west, California. California. That may not be west, but whatever. UC Irvine, got my MFA degree, and then I realized that I really wanted to spend my life talking about art, but I didn't know how to do it. And longer story, sort of shorter, I got over to London, worked on a PhD for 9 years, PhD in museum studies, got it, came back to the US, and started looking for work and scrounging around for work, and finally got a job with Hyperallergic. And then when I started being a staff writer for them, I realized, oh, I can do this kind of for the rest of my life. Like I can spend my time talking about objects that are meaningful and really devote myself to sort of unpicking those objects for myself and for my readers, because I feel like the things that are intangible, the things that are fugitive, those are the things that are actually deeply moving to us and actually shape our experiences of the world. And I want to be able to hold hands with people and co-create a better one.
Let me lead you in clapping hands. Thank you very much. So I want to go back to my original question that Tina answered so lovely and so animatedly. And to go to you, Karon, what is your writer's life like?
Okay, this is working. Right now, because I'm not on a schedule, I'm not in a program, a MA or a doctoral program or something like that. I kind of have a lot of freedom. So what I do is 3 or 4 days a week, I'm inspired to wake up. I wake up early, 6 o'clock in the morning, start with my coffee, and then look at what I have written for what I'm working on right now. And, think about, okay, what's missing here? I might spend the day looking at census reports. I might spend the day, reading a chapter from a book about Ohio and the color line, which was written in, I think it was written in 1909 or something like that. Because that's what I'm looking at for my figures right now, and I'm trying to make sense of it. And so I'll do that until, say, 2 o'clock. And then I say, you have to go to the park now. You have to go. Hopefully the weather's nice. And that's very important for me to communicate, with the trees and the birds and the flowers, and say that's really what I'm connected to. But I'll do that about 3 times a week, shifting between different kinds of books. This is a biography, so I'll either read a chapter from about 3 different biographies that I'm reading right now, or a couple of 19th century books about Ohio, and that includes race. I'm just trying to move it forward, and it is excruciatingly slow. But it's an important subject. It's something that we need, and something that my family has known about my whole life. And we have just always been waiting for the right person to come along and finish this story. Me.
That's exactly right. That's you. Perfect. Trey. Oh, sorry.
I think I'm so in awe of the rest of y'all, because I'm like, oh fuck, you're writing all the time. You're fully as writers. For me, I feel like my answer is a little bit different in that I think probably like many people in the writing world, my typical day, it kind of is like spin the wheel, because it depends on what the day is. I'm working 2 other jobs. I've been working on my book. I'm doing actually a Harlem-based co-writing book now, or in the throes of trying to do that book now, and trying to do some other generative project work for my next long-term projects. But for me, the writer's life is, or depending on what stage you're at in your career, my writer's life version looks like just how do I keep myself alive and fed and such, but then also how do I also kind of marshal the time and the energy to also write, and it's a delicate balance, right? I feel like every time I'm in the one bucket, I'm thinking about anytime I'm not in the writing bucket, I'm thinking about how I should be back in the writing bucket, and the systems that we're in don't. I am in deep awe of the folks that I'm sitting in between, because it is no small. I mean, they deserve a round of applause. Just be able to say that they write consistently and freely every day. That is not a thing that many people achieve to do, and it takes a lot of fucking hard work to get to that point. And so, and discipline and lucky breaks and all those things, but those things take time, right? And I'm sure all of y'all would say that those things take time, and depending on where you're at, it will take time for you, and also reality, that time may never come for you, where you will be solely focused on the craft of your writing. But part of my writer's life, for me, is about how do I achieve a balance that is creatively abundant, professionally responsible, and just like and still joyous, right? Like you want to make sure that you are doing the things that you're doing that does not rob you of the joy and creativity of the thing that drives you. And for me, that's writing. And so for me, the writer's life is about how do you achieve that balance in a way that doesn't overly compromise yourself, but also if your North Star is to like be a writer full time, then what will it take? But also, if your North Star is to be a writer, write. And so those are the two things I kind of balance with myself every day. Thank you.
Okay, Seph, I want you to answer the question, but I want you to answer it quickly because I want to get to the audience to see if they have any questions for us. Seph, Rodney, are you with us? Yes.
I'm actually looking up something. I know this is awfully rude. I apologize. But I'm actually looking up something because...
Could you use your mic, please?
Sorry. Yeah, right. Sorry, I'm supposed to be using this, right. Sorry. I apologize. I look like I'm being frivolous with my time, but no, I'm actually looking up something that I wrote for Hyperlogic because you mentioned the term joy, and there was something that I wrote back in, when was this? 2016. And it was regarding Beyonce's performance at the Super Bowl. And people had a lot to say about that. Like they had a lot to say about Kendrick Lamar at the last Super Bowl. And I kind of did this thing where I gathered a bunch of, I thought, provocative opinions and and analyzed them and broke them down. And one of the things I said at the end, which I still think about every so often, it's one of the things that I've written that I'm most proud of. Sorry, I'm trying to find it. I want to get the wording exactly right. I wish I could play some music while I'm doing this. Like, can you hum, Stephen?
So what? That's how about that? Ain't no mountain high enough, baby. Ain't no mountain, no valley low enough, right?
Ain't no river wide enough.
To keep me from you, Tina.
Go.
All right.
Oh, that's so sweet, Sam.
I'll say basically my writer's life is I journal and that I'm looking across this room and looking at all your faces and you will be in my journal tonight.
Aww.
Right? I'll be talking about how attentive you are. Some people are smiling. Some people are like, some people are, So, but I like thinking about I write every day because I like thinking about what I think about. So I have friends who are really quick. They're like amazing thinkers. They come out of their mouths in perfect sentences and they just have great analysis. I have to sit back and go, what did Tina say to me? She said this one thing. Okay. And I write it down and then I get more clarity that way. And I love, as an archivist, I always want to have the benefit of my own experience throughout the ages. So I want to look back at this moment. Like last year at this time, I was a part of a team called Marking Time, Art and Age of Mass Incarceration. And it was curated by the amazing Nicole Fleetwood. And basically these were artists who were formerly and currently incarcerated and artists who had never been incarcerated, but they were focusing on mass incarceration. Beautiful art. It actually was here from May 1st of 2023 through December 10th of 2023. An amazing piece of work. So I write all the time. I'm writing notes. This will go on my archive. I'm very interested in what it means to write and edit. I could have sat on that panel downstairs with the editors because editing is no small feat. It really isn't. And it's a joyous, for the most part, but also it's complicated because you want to engender trust and you want to say, I'm going to help you bring you to your best work. I'm working on a journal right now where I'm working with a writer who keeps sending me notes and I said, listen, we'll find the story together, but you got to keep sending me something more substantive, right? And trust me so that we can get to this story, this thing that you're talking about. So I'll stop there because he looks like he's ready.
No, but I want to say something about the editing role. I think that there's something in it that's about being a friend, which comes across from what you've just described, but also being a coach, being someone who can see something in someone that maybe they don't see yet themselves. And you're like, come on, I know it's there. Just let's talk this through. We can get to this story, and it's going to be rich and it's going to be rewarding. So the thing that I found was this piece I wrote on Beyonce's performance at the Super Bowl, and I wrote, so Che, which is a reference to Che Guevara, gets reduced to a poster, the renegade figure of Malcolm X to a choreographed arrangement, the struggle against AIDS to a song, and concerted, protracted protest to a hand signal for peace. This is what pop culture does. It's about giving us the whiff, the suggestion of something that has a very high price tag that someone else paid for. And I just, thank you. I just, when you talk about finding moments of joyousness in the process, that was a piece that I was actually not really gung-ho about writing. My editor came to me and he said, hey, Beyonce just did this thing. And I'm like, I didn't really see it. And he's like, well, you should see it. And I was like, and there was some back and forth about whether we could fit it into the schedule. And my attitude was, I don't have to write it, it's fine. It was like, no, you should. And so I did. And it brought up in me this, it's one of those moments where writing does this thing where it makes you realize what you can do. I can be a cultural critic. Like, I can make sense of these things that show up in and around me all the time, and I can break them down to what I think their constituent aspects and foundations. So it's the thing about writing is that it is intermittently rewarding. Like, not every time, not every day. No, but some days you're like, okay.
Yeah, I've talked to you, or
Yeah.
you're, I have to go and write this story, Stephen. And I'm like, I know. But you do it, and you got a deadline. It helps to have deadlines as a writer. It definitely helps. I want to offer the audience, any audience members who might have a question for the panel or say something about their own writing. Here we are wrapping up very shortly. And I do see a hand, and I know that guy too. Do we have a mic to pass around, or should I just go and bring him my mic? Okay, 1 second. Excusez-moi. I'm Oprah.
You get a car.
First of all, Tina, I'm here for you.
Oh.
I haven't seen you in 50 years. Okay. You may remember me as Lionel from the Jeffersons.
Yes.
And Tina and I roomed, there were four of us.
Oh my God.
We toured with Pearl Bailey and Hello Dolly. 3 gay guys and Tina.
You know who was always doing my hair?
I realized that, in case you don't know, this is the 50th year anniversary of the debut of the Jeffersons. And I was approached by a journalist to say something. And I said, I'm still ambivalent and conflicted about that. And it may surprise you, I've only seen the Jeffersons 4 or 5 times in 50 years. I never saw it before I did it. I said the thing I'm most proud is that there were 2 black gay men who entered the homes of Americans, and you accepted us as actors. You accepted our characters. And I said, the other comment I want to make is, why is it that the 11 years the show was on the air, Sherman Hemsley, playing one of the most iconic characters in television history, was only nominated once? I don't think it's ever too late to say I'm sorry. And one of the things I'd like to do is to try to get a campaign to get a posthumous Emmy for him. which is why I have to write. And part of what's stopping me is my own fear, because I was complicit, even as a gay man, in keeping this a secret. And I knew Sherman before, when we were here in New York. I knew him afterwards. I knew I was selected to go on promotion tours because Sherman would bring his boyfriend. And, I know. And so part of what keeps me from putting the pen in my hand to write every day is my own fear. And so I have to talk about that and be open about that. Because I want it documented. I want it somewhere when TV history, is research, that they know this. I want it to be known, and Tina can attest to this, that there was always a disparity between the black shows and the white shows on television, and to this day. Okay? I mean, when you hear Viola Davis say, well, if I'm so wonderful as Meryl Streep, why don't you pay me like Meryl Streep? So, I need to talk about this so that I can get up tomorrow and write something.
But Damon, you have to do that yourself. Do not wait for somebody else to present you. It's not going to fall like manna from heaven. You have to sit down. Somebody made an earlier comment that said, if you want to be a writer, you gotta own that. You gotta hang that shingle out and call yourself a writer. You can write about television history. You are part of it. So you write that book yourself. I'm going to talk to you afterwards because I'm about to burst into tears because I can't believe. No, I can't believe you're here.
I'm here because
but
of you.
But I'm saying you pick up a pen or the computer stylus or the keyboards or whatever it is that you do, and you write that television history and then dedicate it to Sherman. So all of the things that you want to say that you're telling us here today, put that in the form of a book, and then be here next year talking about it. But that's you. That's you being proactive. Because if I was waiting around for somebody to give me a part at 4'11" and 3/4, I'd still be waiting.
Right.
And so I took it upon myself. I'm going to do this. You are television history. You are Broadway history. Yeah. You are also, just so you know, this guy sings opera. You were singing opera in Europe. I'm behind. I'm living in London now after you. You need to write that. Everybody here has a story. Everybody's story is valid. Those of you who want to be writers, start by writing your own life. You will be shocked, the stuff you remember. The people you can actually diss on paper. All of the people, those bullies who were horrible to you in high school, yeah, you can snap and say, hey, look at me now at 4'11" and 3/4. You can do that, so you do that. We're going to talk, okay? I'm so happy you're here, and thank you for coming. Whether it's for me or not, thank you so much.
So I think we have time for one more question or two tiny questions. Oh, okay. Well, thank you. Moving on up. Is there anyone else who has a question? I see a hand right here. Hi, I'm over here, though. Hi. You. Hey.
Hi. My question is regarding making writing a full-time lifestyle. So a lot of people, like, you either see that they've made it and then they are able to live freely through being a writer, but actually getting to that point where you have creative control and also are able to build a lifestyle around it.
I'll talk about you're gonna go broke first.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a long road. It's a long road to you. The vision has to be in front of you. There's gonna be a lot of time. Remember you were talking about you said about being able to find the joy in it, but also working a couple of jobs and all that. So that's what it's going to take first. You got to be willing to do the hard part. You have to, crawl before you walk, but you just have to write every day. Use Terry McMillan. I just said that earlier. Use Terry McMillan as your North Star. She found a way to write and had a child she was raising. She would write in that half an hour when the news was on or during lunch on the job that she had that was not a writing job. Just find those times to just do that and keep sending your work out. You're going to collect a lot of, listen, the rejection is what's going to stop stop you from being a writer. If you can get past that and you have something that says to you, you have not put me on this planet to suffer and to starve, but you have to understand the suffering and the starvation in order to get to the promised land, So just keep writing is all I'm saying. You'll get there.
The only thing I would add to it too is just like, I'm not sure in which ways you're perceiving it, but probably less of the people that you think you're seeing are truly writing full time. Like I think I had an agent quote it to me a gazillion years ago. I think it's something like 8% of writers actually make their full lifestyle and life off of purely writing. So I think it's whoever you're looking at, there's likely another story there. Very few people. And I think also like the great thing about writing, I imagine all of us have kind of touched on this, is that anchoring yourself in writing can open up so many other doors and opportunities. You're not betraying yourself. You're not betraying the craft by indulging in other things, because I think all of us would say like they feed into, a lot of your experiences will feed back into writing. So I don't think about the North Star again. I think it's better to think about what does it mean for me to be a writer, less so about like only a writer or a full-time writer. Just think it's worth thinking about that.
So just to add some detail to that, for me, for example, the writing has led me to curating. I was a full-time staff writer for Hyperallergic from 2016 to about, 17 or 18. And then I became an editor. And then as an editor, I was constantly, and as a writer, I was constantly producing texts about contemporary art. And eventually someone asked me to just curate a show, a co-curate a show. I think the first one was actually a show at Crystal Bridges in Arkansas, a show on craft. And then the curating opportunities became more abundant. And the last one was the Get in the Game show, which opened at San Francisco Museum of Modern Art in October and just closed in February, and we'll travel to Crystal Bridges and then on to the Perez in Miami. So that's a paid gig. These are paid gigs I'm talking about, and the writing led me to them. And I also want to say about the writing, there was something else that y'all had touched on that I wanted to delve into. There's something about, your schedule being, having to put in the hard work. I think the hard work can also look like even getting yourself in a position to write for someone. So the hard work looks like making connections to people, figuring out how to pitch them, figuring out how to handle rejection, attaching yourself to mentors, to people who have been in the game in the way you want to be, because it's not everyone that you want to be your North Star. And I also think, this is a fundamental thing. This is the thing. Ask yourself what you want to say. Like, it's one thing to just like, I want to be a writer. Great. But what do you want to say? Like, what is it that's burning in you that is not being said, right? That only you can say. I'm sure there is a thing that only you can say, because you are very much so an individual human being with your own welter of experiences that no one else has in the same way. But I think it's a really important question to ask yourself. What do I need to say?
So unfortunately, we have to close because there's another panel coming. So I see a hand back there, but just talk with us after we disband the panel. But before you guys get up, I just want to tell, how can people find you and support you? One sentence.
I'm at SephRodney.com. So you can just go to my website, and it's easy to get in touch with me from there.
Okay, thank you, Seph. Karon?
I'm on Karon Taborn, WalkingHarlem.com. My book's sold downstairs in the bookstore.
Yes, thank you. Trey?
Trying to do this real quick. Black Genius comes out July 29th.
Yes.
You can pre-order it now. I also want to say this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful cover that you all see, This young woman, if she'll stand up real quick,
Please stand up.
designed the cover. We just met in the elevator. Other than that, you can find me on Instagram, Trey Johnson.
Thank you. Tina.
www.tinaandrews.com.
Very, very good. I'm Stephen G. Fullwood. Thank you all for coming today.